Perfect. All right, so I got to speak on the mic. So, welcome all. I'm going to be brief. Many of you know parliamentary procedure either because you've served in planning and zoning or you've served in another board. So I'm just going to be brief. I'm going to go through the slides and talk a little bit about kind of the intricacies between Robert's Rules of Order and our own Rules of Order. One of the most important things to note, and in your packet of 3 documents that you have before you, you have a very simple motions guide. All right, it just tells you what are the main motions, the ones that are required to be seconded, the ones that allow you to interrupt the speaker, the ones that allow for debate, and the ones that require either a majority or a 2/3 vote. And we'll go through some of those in a few moments. The other ones are the main motions, and we'll talk a little bit about that and how you make these motions. And the last one is resolution number 23/1945, which is basically the latest and greatest version of our rules of procedure. Most important thing to know is that our rules of procedure supersede Robert's rules. There's, and it's different people have said, no, you can't do that because Robert's rules don't allow that. No, our rules supersede Robert's rules. So where our rules are silent, then you go to Robert's rules. Robert's rules really are meant to, and I'll start with my first slide. Why do we have, and now it's not working again. Sorry, so while they fix the clicker, I'll just basically say that, Robert's rules, the reason that they exist, this goes back to English parliamentary procedure, and it's something that's been adopted here for all boards and for all different types of elected bodies. And what it's meant to do is really kind of be able to focus in on what you're discussing, on the business at hand, and create for something that is orderly, that requires there to be a motion before it's ever brought, in a seconded motion, and allow for, there we go, and make sure that the meetings are democratic and not one person is overtaking the conversation and that everybody has an opportunity to speak. These are the rules.
He can hear now.
Little better?
Thank you.
Okay. Ready? Okay, so those are basically, as we like to call them, the rules of the game. Okay, so the next one. Should you all... Sorry?
Is it these two?
They're not unmuted. Okay. Okay. Absolutely. It's the Chinese. Nope. All right. So, should you all get a copy of the rule? So, the presentation really that I'm going to cover today is most of the rules that you need to know. If not, there's a copy of the rules that I use, which is the 2020 version of Henry M. Roberts' Rules of Order. The complete rules are more than you really need to run your meetings. Basically, the little guide that I've provided you is the majority of the rules, but should you wish for us to get a copy to you or order a copy, I'm more than happy to do so and point you in the right direction. Should you read the Special Counsel Rules of Procedure? Absolutely. Like I mentioned, those are the most important rules that you really need to know inside out. Those govern your meetings, and again, where those are silent, then Robert's Rules take place. How do you get items on the floor? Most important thing to understand is how the meeting functions and how the meeting works, right? The first thing is you always have proclamations, recognitions, and awards. Those take place prior to the commencement of any regular or special meeting. There's 2 meetings that you have. You have regular meetings, which have to be held 11 times during the year. That the charter specifically states. And we all know that the charter is the Bible. It's the Constitution of the town of Miami Lakes. And it also allows for special meetings. Special meetings have to be called a minimum of 48 hours. And that's just the law. Under Sunshine, it's been interpreted that in order to be able to provide proper notice to the public, at least between no less than 24 and at least 72 hours. So most municipalities have created a sweet spot of 48-hour notice. Now, do you all know how you call a special call meeting? No? Absolutely. So a majority of the colleagues have to be on board, and it has to be on a specific topic. So, for instance, Let's assume that, Councilman Herzberg wants to discuss a blasting issue, and he wants for there to be a meeting, and he gets a majority, and now Councilman J.C. Fernandez wants to have an item to discuss, I don't know, Coca-Cola and how Coca-Cola is bad for the environment. He would have to have the majority of the council have that item added to the agenda in order for it to be heard. If it's not, it can't be. So I want to go through some of those nuances so you understand how you get these items on. First part of the meeting is the call to order. The next part is the roll call. You have invocation, pledge of allegiance, and order of business deferrals, additions, and deletions. This part's kind of important. Before this item is heard, if you want to remove your item, let's assume that your item is not tidied or you have some concern that it may not pass given some certain circumstances and you want to give it additional time, at this part of the meeting, you can go ahead and have it pulled and deferred to a different time, okay? If you decide not to, then the item is no longer yours, okay? And we'll talk about how you get your item on and how that process works. But let's assume that you've presented your item. If you don't pull it at this point in time, it becomes part of the body, right? And the only way that it can be deferred is by a motion, and we'll discuss later how that motion works, okay? But that's an important nuance, and in the history of the council, that's been an issue in the past. So making you all aware. So after the order of business deferrals, additions, or deletions, and the agenda's been set, now the meeting starts. The first part is allowing for public comments. Public comments are 3 minutes. You do not need to allow for more than 3 minutes. 3 minutes and you're good. You can allow the meeting to move on. The next part are appointments, committee reports, special presentations, and consent calendar. We all know how the consent calendar works, right? So items on consent can be pulled. You can have specific items that you wish to have discussion pulled at that point in time by making a simple motion. What is a motion? When the consent calendar is about to be presented, you can say, I want to have a certain item pulled from consent and discussed. Now, in order for that to take place, it would be proper to have that during the order of business deferrals, additions, and deletions, and have the item pulled for discussion. Okay? It does not require a second. That's your prerogative. The next part is ordinances in first reading, and then ordinances in second reading. Ordinances in first reading, as you know, are items that, and there's certain items that the town of Miami Lakes require them to be ordinances. There's others that are preferred to be ordinances. The idea behind having an item as an ordinance that may not otherwise be required is that an ordinance gets codified into our code of ordinances, and that codification can be easily found in Muni Code. So if you have something that is a particular rule or something that you want to be allow the public or even yourselves to be able to find, easily, then you would want to have it as an ordinance and have it codified. Many times I've suggested to all of you that I think some of these rules that are discussed should be codified. I think it makes it easier for the public to understand what the rules are and for all of you as well. Once we move past the ordinance of first and second reading are the resolutions, and those are items that perhaps are a little bit more special, maybe require some debate, maybe should not be in consent. A resolution could be the naming of a park. You don't want to have it in consent. It's already been brought up, and you want to have a little bit more of a conversation. Something that requires a contract that's outside the norm of what you usually discuss. You want to have that resolution. A settlement of a lawsuit. You want to have that as a resolution and have separate discussion. New business. Now, this is the part that belongs to you. The way that you get your new items is that within a period of time prior to the meeting, it's the Thursday prior to the meeting by 5 p.m., correct? Tomorrow. So by tomorrow, all of you, if you have any items that you wish to have considered, you present the new business item and you present them to Gina. They should have some idea of if there's going to be any fiscal impact. It should also discuss what the item is going to be, and it should be a narrative. It shouldn't be, I want to talk about blasting. No, you should talk about what do you want to talk about blasting. It shouldn't be, I want to name, I want a moratorium on, I don't know, on artificial grass. And it shouldn't be that. It should be specific as to why you want a moratorium. I'm sorry, didn't mean to, but just it came to mind. It should be why you want a moratorium. So it should be specific enough that your peers understand what it is that you're trying to pass. And not only that, but also for myself and for the manager to have a little bit more of an idea of what it is that you are seeking, so that we can be of better help, especially when we meet. Now, something that I would suggest to all of you is, when you have a new business item, is talk to the manager and talk to myself before you put the item, before you present it to Gina. So that way we have an idea of how to be able to guide you a little bit more and let you know, listen, I would, kind of curtail it this way, I would remove this or add that. And that just, it's more helpful for us. So that way, when it comes on board, we know exactly what you're talking about, and when we're meeting with your peers and doing these briefings, we're able to kind of advocate your position and say, listen, this is what the item is about, and this is what is being considered. And I think it helps the process a lot better. All right. So, and again, it's not working again. Dang it. You gotta get better clickers. No, man. Okay, now it's working. All right. Should you read the agenda? Absolutely, read the agenda. Be familiar with the agenda. Read it before you meet with the manager and myself. Next part. How does new business come? I've kind of explained that already. Okay, so you got on the agenda. What's next? Okay, so I mentioned prior to getting the agenda set, and you go ahead, and if you want to pull the item, pull the item. If not, it becomes part of the agenda, and it becomes part of the council. So your new business item comes. What do? Well, the first thing you need to do is you introduce your item. Talk about it. Speak about it. Explain what it is that you're trying to pass. Once you've done that, then the item needs to be moved. That requires a motion. Okay? So the chair, which is the mayor, he's sitting in the middle, will ask, do I have a motion on the floor? And somebody say, I'll move it. Okay, then after you move it, what do you need? You need a second, right? And after the second, then you can have discussion. Okay? All discussion needs to be conducted or orchestrated through the mayor. Okay? So if you want to be considered, you raise your hand, and then the mayor will address you. Any questions that you want to make to the manager or to the attorney or to any staff member has to be done through the chair. All questions and points of inquiry have to be done through the chair. That's why he's the mayor, and that's his role in the meetings.
But just to be clear, that's why they say through the chair when you're trying to address somebody else, right? So remarks, just like the public technically has to address your remarks specifically to me. It simply goes for us, and the idea is to make it more neutral in terms of the dialogue, right? So you're not directly speaking to somebody, especially when it's a heated moment.
Yeah. And the process is there to make the meeting, again, and maintain decorum. So if everything is done through the mayor, everything is funneling and being channeled through one direction. And he's also the one who gets to decide, who gets to speak and the time and all that. Our rules do describe and used to have time limits. They don't have them anymore. That's something that also can be brought back and to control, the flow of debate. But the flow of debate at the end of the day runs through the chair, which is the mayor. Once the debate has concluded, then the mayor will call a question, there'll be a roll call, and then your motion will be either voted up or voted down. What other motions can you make? Okay, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. One of the things you can do is, let's suppose that you're discussing a particular item of interest. Let's say right now the issue of Live Local comes back around. And you know that, again, the state legislature is, producing a bill, and it's working its way, and it's going to probably change how Live Local works. So you may decide to make a motion to postpone to a certain time. Listen, I want to postpone this item to June to give enough time so that we figure out what the legislature is going to do. This particular motion requires, again, a second, and it requires a majority vote, and then it gets pushed to a later date. Postpone indefinitely. Let's assume that it's a heated conversation, or you guys just don't like what it is, or it's overly politicized. Whatever the issue is, you can make a motion to postpone indefinitely. Postponing indefinitely kills the item. It requires a second, and by simple majority vote, the item is dead.
What's the difference? I
Well,
Maybe it's a controversial item, at least, speaking from a strategic point of view. Maybe it's controversial and nobody necessarily wants to be on record one way or the other. So you're, in essence, putting it on the back burner indefinitely forever. It has the same effect, it's killing, nobody took a stance per se.
right.
But if you postpone indefinitely, can somebody bring it back up? Is there any limitations?
No. No, so that's one of the benefits. The benefits, and I'm going to explain, there's another motion, and I'll go to it now. There's two motions where you can kill, or you can ask for the question to be brought, right? So one of them is, you don't want to take a stance on it, but you don't want the motion to pass, so you'll take a vote to go ahead and postpone it indefinitely. You get a majority vote, it dies. Now, that person that brought up their item, now I'm thinking about it. If you bring up the motion dies, it's still subject to the same limitation. They can't bring it back within 6 months because the item was already brought. It was already part of the body. So that's where I go back to what you have to do at the beginning of the meeting. If you feel that your motion is going to die and you want to be able to tinker it and bring it back in a way that's more appetizing to your peers, pull it before it's ever heard. Once you get to this stage and the motion is kicked and you have one of these motions to postpone indefinitely, you can't bring it back for another 6 months. Okay, those are the rules. Okay, refer to a committee staff. Let's assume it's an item. It needs more work. You want staff to come back with some kind of advice. You can make that motion. Again, it requires a second. It requires a majority vote. Or table. Table is you're having a heated conversation. You want to think about it a little bit more. You want to deal with another item that's before the council and come back to it later. You would table the item, okay? When you table the item, the requirement is you table it and then you pick it up again from the floor, from the table. Okay. You can do it at that same, good question. Yeah. Sure. No, you can. And that's actually often been done. Sure. Let's assume taking blasting, right? It's a hot topic. You have an issue on blasting, and you want it to be beat up by the blasting committee and bring back a report for you to make a decision on how you're going to rule on something. You can go ahead and refer that to the blasting committee and for it to be brought back at a time certain, right? Now tabling, and I'm glad you brought that up. Sometimes tabling is a useful tool, especially when you have an item that statutorily requires it to be done by a certain date or by a certain meeting, and you will have to do it, a budget, let's say. And what you will do is you go ahead and say, we're going to table it for time certain. There you say, I'll table it, and it's going to be tabled to the meeting for next Monday to be taken off and further discussed. So the meeting doesn't adjourn, the meeting continues, it's just being picked up at a later date. And that's also a useful tool for some of those statutory requirements. Again, budget is the one that comes to mind, where you need to have the meeting take place on a certain date, and you want to continue the meeting for another date, and so you table the item. Does that make sense? All right. Guys, if I'm going too fast, you want me to slow down, tell me. So going back also to this issue, because it's interesting, the issue of postponing indefinitely. There's other motions that require 2/3 vote, and one is calling the question. Right? So let's assume that you want people to take a stance, but you want to kill debate immediately. All right? One thing you can do is you can go ahead and say, I'm calling the question. Calling the questions ends debate for that moment, and there's a roll call on the issue of whether the question is going to be called. If 2/3 of the council vote in favor of calling the question, then you go and there's a roll call vote. If 2/3 decide not to call the question, then debate continues. Right? There's a similar motion, which is to limit or extend debate. It's similar to calling the questions. It requires 2/3 vote, but that's more for, the mayor decides to call the question, and you wish to extend debate, right? And so the question fails, and I'm going to go to the mayor in a second because there's another parliamentary motion that you can make. You can go ahead and ask for the debate to be extended. Now, to extend the debate, if the mayor calls it, that would require what is called an appeal, right? You as the board can say, the mayor can say, I'm calling the question. You can say, no, I'm appealing it. The majority of you appeal the calling of the question. It dies. Then you can bring up, let's go ahead and extend debate or limit debate for a certain period of time 2/3 vote on it, you move forward. Again, the reasons that all these rules exist is so that the meeting continues and not one person, not even the mayor, can monopolize the entire conversation. And so that's why these rules are so important for you to understand and for you to use. Appeal decision from the chair, right? So I just touched upon that. And sorry, Mayor, but I had to bring that one up. Moving to amend. At any point in time that a motion is presented, if you agree with the motion, and the motion is during debate, but you feel that the motion should be made a little differently, right? Could be anything that you wish to amend. You're talking about the budget, and you move the budget forward, but you want to amend it to add certain, let's say, extra, staffers for code enforcement or something of that nature. You can amend the motion and say, listen, I'm okay with the budget as is, I'm okay with it, but I'd like to amend it in order to be able to move money from Gina's budget and add 2 more code enforcement officers. That could be amended. So the amendment has to be germane to the main motion. We're talking about the budget, that's germane to the main motion. It's got to be seconded. It can be debated. Doesn't have to be. You can just call the question. And it has to be voted separately from the main motion. So you move on that motion that's amended, and then you move back to the main motion. Right? And you've seen that happen many times where now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any questions on this one? Any questions on anything else that I've talked about or touched upon? Nope? All right. You guys are pros. Motions that can be used at any time. At any point in time, these are motions where you can interrupt the speaker. All right? Point of information when you're lost. If you're lost and you don't understand what's going on, point of information. And then you can ask the chair. That would be appropriate in that case. Mayor, what are we talking about? Where are we? Or you can ask the point of information. Madam Clerk, can you please read the motion again so you understand where exactly you're at in the conversation? Parliamentary inquiry. When there's a rule and you feel that there's an error or something is awry in the meeting, you can ask for parliamentary inquiry. That would be to the town attorney, and the town attorney would give you and point you in the right direction of whether there's been an error or not. Or explain the rule, or explain the motion in accordance either with our special rules or with Robert's rules. Point of order. If the motion has strayed away from the rules, there's heated debate. You guys are not insulting your mothers, or you're insulting your kids, or something of that nature. Well, point of order, then let's get back to the meeting, right? So that's where that would come in. Debate. Members should address everything towards the mayor and be courteous. Okay? All members who wish to speak should be allowed time to speak before a member speaks for a second time. And that's, again, the chair. You raise your hands, chair makes sure the mayor makes sure everybody speaks. Okay, we'll allow for a second round of questions, or he can call the question. It's up to him. It's stuck in. Motion to adjourn requires no second, only a voice vote. All right? So, in front of you, I have a sheet that's called main motions. And so we've already, I think, covered most of what this is. Obtaining and assigning the floor. A member raises their hands, and the mayor calls you by name. Okay? And so it's never proper to raise your hand as if somebody else is speaking. So if somebody else is speaking, the vice mayor is speaking, don't be raising your hand. Wait for the vice mayor to finish speaking, and then raise your hand. Or anybody that wishes to speak, and many times the mayor can do that, hey, who wants to speak on this item during debate? People all raise your hands, and he says, okay, this person's going to speak first, this person's going to speak second, this person's going to speak third. It's up to the mayor how he wishes to handle that. As I stated before, the motion is brought before the assembly by making a motion, by moving, which requires a second in almost all instances, and then there's consideration, which is the debate. All right, the debate is confined to the merits of the motion. And again, it can be called, and the question can be called by the assembly, by all of you as a council, but it requires a 2/3 vote. The chair can also, and the mayor can also ask, are you ready for a question? You know, and it depends. Again, the mayor has a lot of discretion when it comes to this. If the count is incorrect, or you feel that you want to understand, especially if it's a voice vote, whether it was done properly or the ayes have it, you can call for a division. All right, and division goes back to the clerk. The clerk says how many ayes and how many nays, and if necessary, you can also call at that point for a roll call. All right. The second sheet is just, again, describes what the main motion are, how to amend it, refer to a committee, postpone indefinitely. And again, this just gives you a little bit more background as to what are the motions. Also, something else that you can do is suspend the rules. If you believe that at any given point in time you would just want to have free-flowing conversation for whatever reasons, or there's a specific rule and the special rules that allow for suspension, you can also call for suspending the rules. Those do require a second and an affirmative vote, right? Point of personal privilege. These are some other ones. Point of personal privilege is, point of personal privilege before we end the meeting, I'd like to say that, the mayor's just a swell guy. You can do that. Or, I want to wish somebody a happy birthday or congratulate. That would be a point of personal privilege. If you feel that there's a question that's going to be controversial, one of the things you can do is move that you go into a committee as a whole. This is where you're basically suspending some of these motions where you're going to go ahead and actually for committee of the whole, this is a little different. I'm sorry. This is where you want to kill certain maneuvers by keeping out visitors in the press. This particular move that's written here, and again, I took this from our previous parliamentarian, is something that really you can't use because you're a public entity. So even though it's one of the Robert's Rules of Order, it's kind of preempted by law, by sunshine. You can't kick people out. What you can have is, if you have pending litigation, an executive session. But that's separate and apart from what we're talking about. And I'm just going through these just to make sure I haven't missed any, and I don't believe I have. Do you all have any specific questions? I've gone kind of fast through it, because I think all of you understand more or less. What I'd ask all of you that are here, especially those that are newer to this, is I think one of the most important ones is point of information, point of inquiry, and be able to make those questions. So if at any point in time you feel that you're lost or that you don't understand something, just go ahead and blurt it out, and we can bring you back into the main motion. A responsibility that all of you have, without a doubt, is to vote. You all have to vote, unless you're conflicted. If you are conflicted, you have to state the conflict. Okay, and then at that point, you have to leave chambers. Correct. There are certain things that are conflicts. Wait, bro.
If you're uncomfortable, it's not an excuse. State law mandates that you vote. That's what you were elected to do. So just because you don't like the issue or you don't feel comfortable voting on the issue, you have to have a recognized conflict under Florida law or the County Commission on Ethics in order not to vote.
So your advice that if somebody suspects that they may have a conflict, always seek you out
Yes.
first.
Yes.
Yeah. The conflict of interest provisions for attorneys versus the conflict of interest provisions for you as members of the council are two different things. They're very specific under state law and under the county's Commission on Ethics. Ask, just ask. We'll definitely look into it, and we can always get, depending on how much lead time you give us, we can also get advisory opinions as well.
And that's something that we've done a lot in the past for all sorts of different issues. So just ask us for opinion, we'll provide it. But the most important thing is that I think all of you read the agendas, read the rules, and ask questions. Ask questions. And the more questions you ask, the more preparations you do ahead of time, the more efficient you're going to be up there, and the more you make the mayor's life a lot easier in being able to make sure that the meeting goes smoothly and we're able to get real business done and out at an appropriate time. Yes. Yeah. You really do. You really do. Any specific questions on any of these motions? Wait a second.
As far as conflict of interest, can you clarify, for example, if I have an issue with the town, but 300, 400, 500 residents have an issue with the town. It's not really a conflict because I'm a small part of.
Correct.
Can you go over the percentage and
Sure.
proportions?
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and there's no real bright line rule. There's a lot of opinions on it, and if it's a specific issue that seems to be a little bit of a nuance, we can go ahead and ask for an ethics opinion. I'll give you a couple, for instances, of things that have happened in the past. A car dealership, someone that uses, let's say, Miami Lakes Auto, right, and says, "Oh, I just bought my Chevy from there, or I just bought my Corvette from there." All right. Well, yeah. So has half of Miami Lakes, right? And it's a place where a lot of people do business, a lot of people do service. I mean, everybody knows the general manager. That's not a conflict. That's not a real conflict for you. Now, let's assume a little bit different that in the case of someone that has a particular, let's say, someone is bidding on a particular project, a contractor, okay, and someone has their wife works for that contractor and has a high executive position with that contractor, okay, that's a conflict because you're going to have a pecuniary gain from that business and that contract that's coming before the city, all right? So that's something where it's been seen. Now, another issue might be where someone does business with another company and that business, and they're just merely an employee of that business, but that contract is coming before the city. Okay, well, that's a little bit more distant. You're an employee. You're not going to gain personally from that contract. So that may not be perceived as a conflict. So it really goes down to the facts, Councilman, of exactly what it is that is coming before you for consideration and how you gain any benefit from that consideration. Okay. There's, for instance, one of the opinions, I've looked through many of them throughout my years here, is regarding when they were doing construction in the city of Doral, for instance, and there were variances that were being applied, and so those variances were only affecting a certain home area. And one of the, I think it was Borean back in the day, lived or benefited, lived in that area that was going to benefit. So the opinion was he couldn't vote. He couldn't vote because he was part of that small select group of homes that was going to benefit from that decision. So again, it just comes down. Now, on the flip side, right, a particular, let's say, code provision in the town of Medley, which only has a couple hundred residents. Well, I mean, if you were to say, well, it's just because a couple hundred benefits is going to benefit me, I'm not going to vote, then nobody can vote, right? Because it's a very small population. So that number of, which we're asking for, that bright line rule, 100 people that are affected in a big city like, again, Doral, versus 100 people being affected in Medley, it's apple and oranges. It's not the same thing. Does that make sense?
We had at the Planning and Zoning Board, we were going to be deciding on a variance for somebody who was requesting a larger pool than what's allowed, right? And I asked you, I represented the seller as a real estate agent. I represented the seller, and the buyer which I interacted with during the transaction came before the board, and I asked you, well, would I have to recuse myself? And you felt it wasn't necessary. Just out of curiosity, if it was the other way around and I was the buyer's agent, would you recommend, I'm just curious, would you have recommended me to recuse myself if I was the buyer's agent during the time that he bought and they came before and asked for and were requesting a variance?
It depends. Let's assume that you were the buyer's agent after the fact. Now, home was already sold, and they're coming before the council for a variance. You're not going to gain from that, so there's no benefit to you. However, let's assume now that the contract hasn't consummated, and so that you're representing the buyer, and one of the contingencies is that they're able to build the pool. Now, definitely you have a conflict. Now you can't vote on it. Why? Because you're going to benefit. If that sale goes through, you're going to earn your commission. If it doesn't, you don't. So it all depends. What kind of benefit are you drawing? And so if you're drawing a benefit from that vote, then obviously you're conflicted, because whatever you vote yes or no on, you're going to be hurting or benefiting yourself. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Does that make sense? Any questions on anything? I'll open the mic on any of these votes, conflicts. You all know about ex parte? Yeah.
Yeah, I would still go, Raul, I would still go over, I'll give you this mic here, but I would still go over, yes, what ex parte means, et cetera, as well as maybe the term germane, just so that everybody's clear.
All right, so ex parte. Ex parte, for lawyers, means ex parte communication when, you know, when you're talking to the judge or something like that, and you're not supposed to be, the judge should disclose it, things like that. Here, you will get lobbied, and it's that simple. You're gonna get lobbied as items come before you, especially for zoning. You are considered quasi-judicial. You're essentially serving as judges. You're not supposed to be speaking to people within 7 days of the hearing. It's just that simple. Those are the rules. If you happen to do that, as an exception, you have to disclose it. But if people are talking to you, and there's certain lobbyists who constantly do it despite the fact that they should know better and do know better, but they wait till the last second because of the item or whatever. If you are contacted and you have a discussion, yes, you have to disclose it. That should be the exception, not the rule. You're not supposed to be having those discussions. It's just that simple. You can politely tell the lobbyist, hey, you know, I've got to disclose this and things like that. This is a problem. Please don't do it again. Contact me, you know, much further in advance. But if not, the public is entitled to know that you've had these discussions. And you have to disclose it. There's a form that you have to file and stuff like that. That's the way I remember it,
Correct.
right?
Yeah. And you have to also make sure that the person's been registered as a lobbyist. There is a lobbyist registration that's part of the Miami-Dade County Code, which we have to follow, and we're formulating a code that's a little bit more stringent than Miami-Dade County for ourselves.
And they got to pay.
Right.
They gotta pay
with
the fee.
Gina.
Right.
So you want to make sure that that's going on. What happens if you don't disclose it? Well, that's a problem. If you don't disclose that communication, because the public has to understand why you're coming to a decision. And if that ex parte communication is affecting your ability to make a decision. And you have to put that on the record.
You wanted me to cover something else. Did I miss something?
Just to explain for everybody, germane, because obviously, when you're making amendments, it has to, So I just wanted you guys to go over what it means for something to be germane, in case some are not familiar with that term. Just because obviously with amendments, right, it has to be germane to the main motion.
Right.
So what is germane?
Okay, germane would be you're discussing issues on landscaping, okay, and you want to bring up a motion to talk about, you know, palm trees or oak trees, and it's part of the ordinance that's before you. That would be germane. Now, you're talking about palm trees, and you're talking about, you know, oak trees, and all of a sudden you decide to talk about potholes in the middle of the street. That's not germane. That has nothing to do with landscaping whatsoever. That should not be part of the motion.
Yeah, in essence, for those in the public that are listening in, something that is germane is something that relates to the main item being discussed, the substance of the main item being discussed. It can't be something completely and wholly unrelated or even only tangentially related to the substance. But just wanted to make that clear for everybody.
And the reason for that, too, is twofold. One, Florida law requires that any resolutions or ordinances really cover one subject, okay? Two, whatever you discuss has to be something that has already been publicly noticed. If you start discussing something that wasn't publicly noticed, and you kind of flip, you know, for lack of a better word, flip the script, then someone could have an action and say, this is an item that was discussed that wasn't publicly noticed, and therefore the resolution ordinance is illegal, essentially. So you have to be kind of very careful with that. And I have dealt with Raul and I have dealt with several lawsuits with regards to that, with regards to the subject being changed, and whether that subject is substantial or it's not. And that's really where it turns on. So that's a very good, important point. Yeah.
Do any of my colleagues have any additional questions or comments?
All right.
So, There we go.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Voice vote, the vote, though. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I'm feeling better. Not at 100%. I've not like either, but I'm getting closer to it.
Well, we hope you feel better, and just make sure through the presentation later when it uploads to the town's YouTube page and Facebook page. It's not too. It's informative, but it's not too long. Again, we all hope you continue recovering. Take care, man.
See everybody. Bye.